Hello and welcome to Motor Week. Now, before we say goodbye to this year and welcome in 1999, we thought this would be a good time to take a look back at what an amazing year 98 has been for the international motor industry.
We'll shortly be reviewing the news from 98 and taking a look at some of the bigger developments over the past 12 months. We'll take you to the 4 motor shows featured on Motor Week and take you around the world on car launches attended by our camera crews throughout the year.
Now, one of the highlights of this year for me was being invited by Chrysler to travel to America to take part in something that's become a national institution. I went to the Sierra Nevada mountains in California and took part in one of the most harrowing 4x4 courses there is. You'll find out about it later in the programme.
Here on Motor Week, we always try to be first to bring you the very latest developments, and we do that by travelling the world to all the various international motor shows. So here are some of the highlights from this year's shows. Detroit this year was the venue for Chrysler's launch of their new range of concept cars, including the Pronto Cruiser. In Geneva, Vauxhall unveiled the new Astra, and the show was a big event for Volkswagen too, who launched their new small car, the Lupo. This was accompanied on their stand by another new addition for the VW family, the Bora. In Paris, we got our first glance of the new Peugeot 206, along with the Jaguar XK180. And finally, the British International Motor Show was chosen for the launch of the new Jaguar S-Type. Its supposed competitor was also unveiled, the new Rover 75.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, this year I took part in the ultimate 4x4 experience. I was in a Jeep Wrangler, it was the Rubicon Trail, and here's how I got on. Now, what you're about to see is another one of those things that could only happen in America. Having a fascination for this kind of impassable terrain, land that looks like it comes from another planet, is quite one thing. Deciding that for kicks, you're going to drive straight over it is another. But that's exactly what a group of Jeep enthusiasts decided 45 years ago. They saw this impassable terrain as a challenge, and they felt sure that their Hardy Willis Jeeps could cross it no problems. They created the very first Jeepers Jamboree, a rather curious affair in which Jeep owners pay for the privilege of hammering their own vehicles over rocks, through mud and along terrifying passes in this Jeep utopia known as Rubicon Springs. And there is absolutely no shortage of Jeepers wanting to take up that challenge. What started off as a fairly modest affair with just a few vehicles has now grown into a huge event, attracting people from all over the world. Entry now is so popular that it's decided via a kind of lottery system. And guess who's managed to bag a winning ticket? Of course, you can't take part in the biggest and the baddest Jeep Jamboree without having your very own Jeep to drive in. And this one is mine. It's going to get me through the next couple of days, hopefully. It's a 4-litre Jeep Wrangler, and it's just like the ones that you'll find cruising down the good old King's Road. There are no special modifications on this vehicle at all. In fact, the president of Chrysler is adamant that any vehicle that Chrysler produce bearing the Jeep badge has to be capable of completing the Rubicon Trail in one piece. Now, about that Rubicon Trail. Off-road trails are rated from 1 to 10. 1 is, yes, the easiest, and there are plenty of those. But there is only one 10, and it's the Rubicon here in California. It may only be 22 miles long, but it's 22 miles that takes people to places roads just don't want them to go to. Now, I've been warned that this path is a boulder-infested, differential-smashing, kidney-bruising, wheel-bending path to nowhere. In short, it's a Jeep heaven, and I've always been a girl who's game, so here goes. The trail has all the perfect ingredients. You never know what's around the corner. There's breathtaking scenery, and it certainly challenges your driving skills. A comforting thought as I approach the first tricky bit of the day is my trusty copy of Mark A. Smith's Guide to Safe, Common Sense Off-Road Driving. What I want to know is, where's the common sense in driving through all of of this lot instead of round it. Still, I've been assured by the expert that there's a simple technique to rock driving. You need low gearing, a supple suspension, nerves of steel and a very understanding bank manager.
All right, come forward, me, cut, me.
If you were one of these people that thought to get excited behind the wheel, what you need is speed, forget it. This is absolutely thrilling, but speed has got no place here. You want the lowest gear possible. You chug along with just the occasional delicate touch on the accelerator. And you never, ever use the clutch, no matter how tempting it is. Just finished my first day on the Rubicon Trail. We've been driving for 13 hours. I'm absolutely exhausted. And I don't think I've been this dirty since I was about 7. Still, never mind, because I've got a night in a tent and a bath in an icy cold lake to look forward to. Some girls get all the luck, don't they? The Rubicon Trail is renowned for the beauty and the toughness of its terrain. But it's also just as renowned for the huge party that takes place every year over at the Rubicon Springs camping spot. And as the event has grown over the years into a huge production, so has the supporting cast.
Hi, I'm Whitey McKnight, and I'm running the bar at the Rubicon Springs bar, campground bar. And Jeeps get in here normally about 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and we have a band that comes and plays.
What do you think is special about the Rubicon Trail?
Oh, I believe it's the most difficult trail, and it's 9 hours to go 9 miles. And once people get here, they treat them like gold. They feed them really well. And the cocktails are pretty adequate.
Cool. I know the beer's cold.
The beers are cold. This is the coldest beer this side of Lake Tahoe.
What's your job on the trail? Because you have a special job, don't you?
Trail guide or rock roller. Today, just walking along, getting rock stacked in so everybody can make it through.
And what do you do with all the tricky points? Do you guide people through?
We try to keep them on top of the rocks.
Have you ever had anybody that didn't stay on top of the rocks?
Oh yeah, now and then.
Go on, tell us, what's the worst, who's the worst driver you've ever had? Can you remember?
Oh, we've had some doozies, that's for sure. But I'm not going to name any names, okay?
Has anybody ever rolled a Jeep?
Oh yeah, it does happen, but that's why we basically, we put an emphasis on safety, okay? And that's why we want everybody to wear their safety belts or whatever. If something does happen, that safety belt will work.
As you settle your aching bones down by the campfire with half a cow to chew on and of course the obligatory bottle of beer, it's the perfect time to unwind and listen to the day's tall tales. And believe me, there are plenty of those. Just when you find it's all over and you're winding down on the final stretch, comes the toughest part of the trail, Cadillac Hill. Well, this is it. We've reached the end of the Rubicon Trail and it is so beautiful here. I can't believe we've just driven through that valley. It's only 10 miles long, but it's taken us a day and a half to travel through it. And I tell you, it's not for the faint-hearted.
It just goes to show Ginny's just one of the lads. Now, coming up after the break, a look at Citroen's Common Rail diesel technology, and we take you around the world with our cameras and show you where we've been this year.
This year Citroën gave us our first taste of the very sexily titled Common Rail diesel technology, and Fiat, Peugeot and BMW will be following in their footsteps next year. Well, I've been finding out how this rather neat piece of technology works and what it means to own it. Strong hints of blackberries with overtures of basil, and is that essence of rosewater? Well, not quite, but Citroën are hoping that the exhaust emissions from their revolutionary new diesel engine will help them to leave the company smelling of roses. Yes, there's a new acronym in town, and the letters that count are HDI, High Pressure Direct Injection. It's a new diesel engine for the new millennium, and it relies on a clever piece of technology called the Common Rail system. Now, if you're thinking, Common Rail what? Is he talking about trying to buy the cheapest ticket on a Virgin Northwest train or something? Then you're probably more interested in what it feels like, what it means to drive behind a Common Rail system as it simply gets on with its job under the bonnet. And the first thing to talk about is fuel consumption. This is a Xantia 2-litre HDI SX, and it does 51 miles to the gallon. And Citroën are very quick to point out that that's 60% better than the 2-litre petrol-driven version. And because the engine is much more efficient, you get much better torque at the lower end. And if you like figures, then it's 150 pound-foot between the revs of 1300 and 3800 RPM, which is pretty much right through the range of the revs that count. Another result of the way that the fuel is being burnt in this system is that there's no lag when the turbo kicks in. If I put my foot to the floor, then the engine doesn't gasp before the turbo takes hold. It's very positive. Really quite good, actually. Now, for clever technical reasons, which we will be going into in a moment, so get a notepad and pencil ready, the engine noise levels have been drastically reduced. You can still tell it's a diesel when it's idling, but at this sort of speed, 35 miles an hour, you could easily be driving a petrol car. It is quite quiet. And also, there is an acoustic baffle over the engine too, which helps. And of course, there's that sweet smelling exhaust. It's 20% cleaner than the old 2.1 litre diesel version of the Xantia, and 30% cleaner than the petrol-driven version. Good news for the Chancellor, Mr. Gordon Brown. Bad news if you're trying to top yourself by sniffing the exhaust. Sorry about that. Okay, so far so good. But I realise there will be petrol heads out there who are gagging to find out exactly what is happening underneath this plastic engine noise baffle. So, have a look at this. Citroën's new Common Rail diesel engine uses the same technology as the Mercedes A-Class diesel that we raved about in a previous programme. So here's a reminder. Fuel goes through a pump which pushes it at a very high pressure into a metal tube, and that's the Common Rail. The tube is effectively a reserve, keeping the fuel at 1,350 bar, twice as much as conventional direct injection. Then a little black box decides the precise moment to release fuel via tiny injectors into each cylinder. A very small amount enters and ignites microseconds before the main fuel injection. This helps to reduce the noise and vibration associated with traditional combustion of diesel fuel, and the benefits are impressive. By the way, the 1999 version of the Citroën Xantia has some extra specifications for your added future motoring enjoyment. For instance, there's Traffic Master.
Traffic Master.
Told you so that at least you'll know where the traffic congestion is, even if you can't actually avoid it. There are also head and chest lateral airbags and a passenger airbag which can be switched off for extra safety if you have a child in the front or something. And also there's a 6CD auto changer available on the SX models upwards, which can be controlled from the steering wheel right here. So, is the common rail system a glimpse of the future for diesel engines? Well, you betcha, because the Citroën Xantia is just the first of its kind to be introduced into this country. Watch out for similar systems from BMW, the Mercedes A-Class, Fiat and the Peugeot 206. All in all, you could say that the common rail system is set to become very common indeed.
Every year we literally travel the globe to bring you the best stories, and 1998 has been no exception. We've driven some fantastic cars in some fantastic locations, and here's the highlights. How long do most car manufacturers keep a model in production? Well, if they're American or Japanese, between 5 and 7 years. Obviously, some manufacturers keep things going longer. The Mini's been going 40 years and the Beetle 50 years. But how come the Maestro is still being built 20 years on? Well, the answer, believe it or not, lies in Bulgaria. It all started when the Bulgarian government decided they wanted a national car. The country had become independent. Rover found a factory, trained up staff, put in the tools and generally spent around £20 million on a plan to build the Maestro there from CKD, that's completely knocked down, kits. But at the 11th hour, things went wrong. The Bulgarians signed a deal with Skoda. There were dark stories of bribery and corruption, and Rover pulled out. And that left a large number of kits lying around, just waiting for someone to assemble. So, Ian, how come you're screwing Maestro kits together here in Ledbury?
Well, we bought the kits from Rover in 1997, May 97, and converted them from left-hand drive to right-hand drive. We've been selling them to the public ever since.
And is it a difficult car to put together?
We're very, very fortunate. You couldn't wish to assemble a simpler car. It's quite straightforward.
And they look slightly different to the Maestros I remember. Why is that?
Yeah, it was a Bulgarian market spec. It's a Clubman, really, without a sunroof.
Now, when you build the cars from the kits, you're converting them from left-hand drive to right-hand drive, but there's some interest in the left-hand drive models.
Well, we've actually sold left hookers in the last few weeks for people to go into France and Spain, because they're left-hand drive already.
And you're doing the vans as well?
Well, the vans are the 500, same again, 1.3, 5-speed petrol, all in white.
Now, I remember the Maestro launch in Spain. The top-of-the-range versions had a voice synthesizer that told you to put on your seatbelt and take off the handbrake. Now, we came down a mountain road, I hit a patch of oil, skidded into the side of the mountain, smashed the car very hard and turned it on its roof, and we skated down the road with cascading glass and shrieking metal. Came to rest, hanging in our seatbelts. There was a little silence and a voice said, "Low oil pressure." Let's hope it doesn't happen for the reunion of the Maestro. It's actually very useful to drive the Maestro because it reminds you just how far car designers come in the last 10 or 15 years. When the Maestro was launched, I thought it was very underrated. It got an image as an old man's car. You used to see them smoking pipes with hats on in front of you at a stolid 45 miles an hour, no faster. But in fact, there were some very quick Maestro variants. I remember the MG Maestro Turbo that was a real road burner, a lot quicker than a Golf GTI 16 valve, for instance, but somehow never quite had the same image. For 5,000 quid today, it's exceptional value for money. 5-speed gearbox, no power steering, but the steering isn't too bad. Very sparse and Spartan plastic dash layout. But again, what do you want for the money? It would be silly to pretend that the Maestro is the same as a brand new current car. It is starting to show its age. And for £5,000, you could buy a pretty good second-hand car instead. Nevertheless, it is brand new. A lot of people in this country did buy Maestros first time round, and it could be coming up for retirement. You might think that a truly British car like this, and let's face it, there aren't many of them, would be the one to see you out.
Innovations often filter down from the large luxury cars to the family cars of tomorrow. And with our motorways getting ever more crowded, Mercedes have come up with something which may become a crucial new safety feature in all cars of the future. Here's one for those individuals who feel that driving 3 inches from the car in front at 80 miles an hour will reduce their journey time by a significant amount. Because those clever boffins at Mercedes-Benz have developed a safety device that should reduce those ludicrous games on our motorways. Distronic uses a radar to gauge the distance to a car, truck or even motorcycle in front. The sensor is hidden behind the radiator grille. There are 3 transmitting and receiving units, transmitting constantly with an opening angle of 3 degrees, and that enables the system to keep track of 3 lanes of traffic. The shortwave radar signals, 77 GHz, detect an obstacle and return on a different frequency. The change of frequency varying depending on the distance involved, allowing the digital signal processor to work out how close the obstacle is. Gentle easing off the throttle or braking in more extreme situations is then activated to increase the gap to a safe distance. Operating the new system is similar to Mercedes Speedtronic cruise control. When you've taken your S-Class to your desired cruising speed between 25 and 100 miles an hour, you merely move a lever on the steering column up or down and the system is engaged. Your selected speed range is displayed on the instrument cluster, as well as displaying a graphic of the distance between you and the car in front. And because the system uses radar, it can even see through fog or heavy rain.
Coming up in the new year, there are plenty more great stories from the team here at Motor Week. I'll be driving BMW's M Coupe in Spain, but the main thing to watch out for in January is the 1999 Detroit International Motor Show. Until then, have a happy new year and make sure you watch us next year.